Ibn Etzebeth versus the Wallabies. Let's kick things off with one of the most iconic modern-day enforcers, Ibn Etzebeth. The man's a walking mountain with a permanent scowl that looks like it was carved out of granite. During a 2022 Rugby Championship match against Australia, Etzebeth gave us a masterclass in what it looks like when alpha energy goes just a bit too far. It all started with a line-out gone wrong and a bit of extra push and shove after the whistle. Now in rugby, you expect a little scuffle here and there, it's part of the turf wars. But Etzebeth wasn't having any of that calm it down nonsense. He grabbed Wallabies hooker Alan Ala Latoa like a nightclub bouncer about to toss a drunk guy out at 2 AM. There was a hand to the neck, a shove that probably registered on a seismograph in Sydney, and a full-on chest-to-chest standoff. Referees rushed in, and Etzebeth gave them that look, you know, the "do I really need to stop?" look. He didn't throw a punch, but the body language? That was a whole monologue of menace. No cards were shown, but the video made the rounds online, drawing mixed reactions. Darcy Graham versus Cheslin Kolbe. During a tense Scotland versus South Africa match in 2023, Darcy Graham and Cheslin Kolbe reminded everyone that even speed demons can have a short fuse. It started with a late tackle, but then things escalated quickly. A little shove from Kolbe and "excuse me" from Graham, and suddenly we had a scrappy little ballet breaking out on the sideline. Arms flailing, jerseys being grabbed, and a bit of that classic "hold me back" energy, except no one was really holding back. Let's be honest, neither of them landed anything resembling a clean shot. It was more like two cats fighting over a couch cushion. But the intent? Oh, that was real. And what made it all the more surreal was the size contrast. Kolbe is about 5 feet 7 inches, Graham's barely taller, and watching them square up was like seeing two angry smurfs in cleats. The ref wisely diffused it with stern words and no cards, but the replay became meme fodder for weeks. Moral of the story, don't let the size fool you. These guys may be fast, but they've got fight in them too. Rabah Slimani versus Michel Rizzo. When Rabah Slimani of France and Michele Rizzo of Italy squared off during a Six Nations clash, it wasn't just a fight, it was heavyweight drama with scrummaging spice. The incident came after repeated scrums collapsed, and if you've ever seen two props go nose to nose, you know it's a ticking time bomb. Slimani had been giving Rizzo the business all day, little digs, late hits, the usual front row chaos. Eventually, Rizzo snapped. What followed was pure carnage. A headbutt from Rizzo, a retaliatory uppercut from Slimani, and then a rugby pile-on as teammates rushed in. It looked less like a match and more like a bar fight at a truck stop in Toulouse. The referee took a deep breath, conferred with his assistants, and then did the unthinkable. Double red cards. The crowd gasped. The commentary team went silent. This was rare, even by Six Nations standards. Later interviews revealed both players had been warned repeatedly throughout the match, so when they exploded, officials had no choice. It was a moment that reminded everyone, even the most disciplined tournaments can go full WWE when you throw props into the fire. Manu Tuilagi versus Chris Ashton. Tuilagi versus Ashton, a grudge match so spicy it's got its own fan base. The first round of this rugby beef actually started way back in 2011 when Tuilagi punched Ashton off the field during a premiership game. Fast forward to 2023, and guess what? The drama wasn't over. This time, it was Sale Sharks versus Northampton Saints, and tensions were already sky high. Tuilagi had that look, the one where he's doing math in his head is like, how many weeks will I get if I elbow him here? And then, boom. During a carry, Tuilagi led with the elbow right into Ashton's neck. Not subtle, not slick, just good old-fashioned get out of my way violence. Ashton dropped, medics rushed in, and the ref went straight to the TMO. The decision was a red card, no hesitation, and to make it even more dramatic, Ashton didn't hold back in post-match interviews, calling Tuilagi reckless and dangerous. Tuilagi, for his part, looked like he couldn't care less. The man probably eats criticism for breakfast. Their rivalry is like a rugby version of Batman vs Joker, except it's all scrums, elbows, and bad blood. Mohamed Hawass versus Scotland. In 2020, French prop Mohamed Hawass made headlines for punching Jamie Ritchie during a Six Nations game against Scotland. Just full-on, no-nonsense, closed fist punch, right in front of the ref. What followed was a red card and France losing the match. But here's where it gets wild, he did it again in 2023. Same opponent, same team. This time though, it wasn't a punch, it was a headbutt on scrum half Ben White. Within 10 minutes of the game starting, Hawass went from tight head prop to tight head missile. The headbutt was so blatant it didn't even need a TMO. The referee looked at him like, "Really? Again?" and pulled out the red card again. The rugby world was baffled. France had been on a hot streak and Haouas just nuked their momentum. Haouas now holds a bizarre record as the only French international with 2 red cards against Scotland. Not exactly the kind of stat you want on your rugby resume. The French Fédéral won mayhem. Alright, so if you thought test match brawls were intense, wait until you get a taste of French amateur rugby. We're heading into the chaotic world of Fédéral 1, where passion runs deep, tempers flare fast, and apparently, entire teams forget that rugby is not MMA. The spotlight here is on a 2022 match between Hier Carqueiran and La Seine-sur-Mer, a derby game that turned into an all-out war zone. It started the usual way, tense scrums, aggressive tackles, and the occasional chest bump. But then, out of nowhere, it exploded. One scuffle turned into 5. Players sprinted across the field, not to join the play, but to join the fight. We're talking 30 players, all in on the action. Punches flew, jerseys got ripped, and somewhere in the background, you could hear the referee's whistle getting completely ignored. By the end of it all, 5 red cards were dished out, and honestly, that was generous. The match probably needed a fire extinguisher more than a referee. It was messy, it was wild, and it was everything you'd expect from a French rugby brawl. And the craziest part? No one was that surprised. Because in French lower league rugby, this kind of chaos happens more often than you'd think. Grenoble versus Brive. Let's stay in France for a moment, because apparently they just do brawls better over there. This next one takes us back to a top 14 showdown between Grenoble and Brive, a rivalry that had been simmering for years. The 2016 match in question was already rough with elbows and rucks, late hits, and more accidental knees than you could count. And then came the scrum. You know how some scrums are tight and technical? This one was a powder keg. Brive dominated the push, Grenoble didn't like it, and suddenly fists started flying. No warning, just chaos. Props squared up, second rows got involved, and even the backs ran in like they were part of a flash mob. One Grenoble player was seen throwing multiple punches before disappearing under a pile of bodies like a rugby-themed action movie. 3 players were sent off, several more cited post-match, and the footage became instant brawl history. French commentators didn't even flinch. They were just like, "Ah yes, another Saturday." It's the kind of game that reminds you, sometimes rugby isn't about the scoreboard, it's about who's still standing at the final whistle. Samipini Finau versus Hamilton Burr. This next one didn't even happen during a game. No, this was during training. The Chiefs, one of New Zealand's top Super Rugby teams, were preparing for a big match in 2024. Training was going at full pace, emotions were high, and then, bam, Samipini Finau and Hamilton Burr got into it. No one really knows what sparked it. Maybe a late tackle, maybe just bad vibes. But suddenly, the cameras caught Finau swinging for Burr, who did not back down. Punches were thrown, teammates rushed in, and for a good 30 seconds, the Chiefs looked more like a fight club than a rugby squad. And this wasn't your run-of-the-mill shoving match, this was a proper dust-up. The clip went viral almost instantly. Some fans laughed it off, saying, "That's just toughening them up." Others were a bit more concerned about the team culture. Coaches tried to downplay it afterwards, saying it was just boys being boys, that sort of thing, but you could tell they weren't thrilled. Still, it gave fans a rare behind-the-scenes look at what happens when high-level athletes lose their cool off the field. Owen Farrell versus Schalke Brits. Back in 2013, the British and Irish Lions were warming up for their tour in Hong Kong, facing a scratch invitational side called the Barbarians. You'd think a game like that would be pretty chill, right? Just shake the rust off. Yeah. No. Enter Schalke Brits, a South African hooker playing for the Barbarians, and Owen Farrell, England's golden boy. Somewhere around the 20-minute mark, Farrell got a bit too physical. Brits didn't like it, so what did he do? He punched Farrell, clean, in the face, and not like a little get off me shove, this was a full right hook that had the Lions medics rushing in. Farrell took it like a champ, but you could tell he was fuming. The ref gave Brits a yellow, but the citing commission gave him a 3-week suspension. The kicker, Brits and Farrell, were club teammates at Saracens at the time. Imagine punching your co-worker in the face during a company softball game. That's the energy here. To his credit, Brits apologized and laughed it off later. Farrell? Well, he just added it to the long list of people who've tried to rearrange his jaw. 1989, Lions versus Wallabies. It was 1989 and the British and Irish Lions were on tour in Australia. They had just lost the first test and were desperate to make a statement in the second. And boy, they did. From the opening kickoff, you could feel the tension. And just minutes into the game, it happened. A massive fight erupted in the middle of the field. We're talking boots, fists, elbows, and probably a few expletives in every available accent. Legendary Lions flanker Peter Winterbottom was stomping rucks like he was trying to start a fire. The Aussies gave it right back, especially Nick Farr-Jones and David Campese, who weren't shy about diving into the chaos. And here's the twist. No one was sent off, not a single card. This was the 80s when men were men, and apparently, concussions were just mild inconveniences. Despite the brutality, the Lions won the game and went on to win the series. Many players later said that the brawl turned the tide. Rugby historians remember it as the day civility took a back seat and raw physicality took the wheel. It wasn't just a fight, it was a turning point. And it still gives rugby fans goosebumps to this day. Scotland schools melee. You'd think school rugby would be a bit more about sportsmanship and less about swinging fists. But in 2024, during a junior rugby tournament in Cape Town, things got ugly, fast. This was a high-intensity under-16 match between two Scottish school teams touring South Africa, the kind of fixture meant to build character, you know? Instead, it turned into a cautionary tale. Tensions had been rising the whole game with late tackles, trash talk, and a few borderline cheap shots. But then, after a breakdown near the halfway line, one player went down hard. A teammate rushed in to defend him, a shove turned into a slap, and then total melee. We're talking flying punches, one kid kicking another while he was on the ground, and coaches sprinting onto the pitch like security guards at a music festival. The video of it spread online, sparking outrage and concern. People weren't just upset at the violence, they were shocked by how fast it escalated and how many players joined in. School rugby is supposed to teach discipline. This taught everyone that even 16-year-olds can throw hands like seasoned pros when things get heated. Afterward, the tournament organizers issued statements, suspensions were handed out, and several schools reviewed their codes of conduct. But that footage? Yeah, that's going to live forever in rugby internet history. Bourgoin Brawl FT Neil Best. If you're a rugby Reddit lurker, you've probably seen people talk about Bourgoin versus Stade Francais like it was some kind of gladiator match. And honestly, that's not far off. This happened around 2012, and while there's no super clear broadcast footage, eyewitness accounts paint a vivid picture. The story goes, fights broke out every few minutes, yes, minutes, throughout the entire game. One player in particular, Irishman Neil Best, apparently caught a full punch to the eye and kept playing like nothing happened. Imagine getting clocked so hard your eye swells shut and you just say, it's rugby. And it wasn't just one isolated incident, there were repeated headlocks, shoving matches, and off-the-ball strikes basically. Anytime someone went to ground, someone else tried to start a fight. It reached a point where fans genuinely couldn't keep track of who started what anymore. Eventually, multiple players were cited and disciplinary hearings dragged on for weeks. But in the end, the match became infamous for one thing: never calming down. It wasn't a game, it was a 2-hour war with a ball in the middle. Duncan McRae versus Ronan O'Gara. It's the year 2001. The British and Irish Lions are playing New South Wales Waratahs in a warm-up game before the Australia tour. Everything's going fine until Ronan O'Gara, the Lions fly half, gets tangled up on the ground with Duncan McRae, the Waratahs fullback. Now O'Gara was never a fighter. Tactical genius? Yes. Scrapper? Not really. But McRae? Oh, he was ready. Out of nowhere, he straddled O'Gara and just started swinging. 11 unanswered punches. In the face. No one was nearby. No one was quick enough to stop it. Just McRae raining fists like a human hailstorm, while O'Gara covered up like he was trying to survive an avalanche. When officials finally pulled them apart, O'Gara's face looked like he had gone 3 rounds with Tyson. Stitches, swelling, full facial trauma. The ref didn't hesitate, red card for McRae, and one of the harshest bans handed out at the time, 7 weeks. To this day, no one really knows why McRae went that hard. Maybe something was said, maybe tensions were high, but one thing's for sure, it was one of the ugliest moments in Lions history. And O'Gara, he somehow came back on the tour and kept playing like a champ. Selesai Ma'afu versus Tom Youngs. Now let's rewind to a proper club level slugfest in the English Premiership. It's Northampton Saints versus Leicester Tigers, a rivalry that's already pretty testy. Add in the fact that both sides had something to prove, and yeah, you've got a recipe for carnage. In the middle of a rolling maul with tempers flaring, Tom Youngs, Leicester hooker and known tough guy started laying into Selesai Ma'afu. Lots of jostling, a little slapping, the usual. Except Ma'afu wasn't in the mood. He pulled back and landed a clean uppercut. Not a wild swing. A textbook, highlight reel, lights out punch. Youngs didn't collapse, but he definitely stumbled. You could tell the hit registered. The ref didn't even need to review it. Ma'afu was shown a yellow card in-game, but the footage earned him a 1-week suspension later. What makes this one memorable is the sheer execution. It wasn't chaotic, it was clinical, like Ma'afu had been waiting his whole life for a moment just like that. Even fans on opposing sides couldn't deny it. That was one of the cleanest punches in rugby history. Brutal, but clean. Hedi Wedgedy versus the referee. Alright, for our final entry, we've got a fight that wasn't a fight at all. It was a straight up assault, and it happened in a junior league in France. During a tense match, a referee named Benjamin Casti awarded a penalty. Nothing out of the ordinary, but one player, Hedi Wedgedy, completely lost it. No build up, no scuffle, just walked over and punched the referee in the face. Casti collapsed instantly and the entire field erupted. Teammates of the ref came running in, coaches screamed, and then, unbelievably, a mass brawl broke out around the fallen referee. It was a dark, disgusting moment in rugby. Wedgedy was banned for life, and rightfully so. The French Rugby Federation condemned the act, and for once the entire rugby world agreed this wasn't about rivalries or hot-headed mistakes. This was violence with no excuse. Casti eventually recovered, but the scar it left on the sport, especially at the junior level, was deep. This wasn't just a fight, it was a wake-up call, and hopefully one that the sport never forgets. So there you have it, 15 of the wildest, rawest, and most unhinged rugby fights of recent years. Some were fiery bursts of passion, others downright terrifying. But whether it's Etzebeth staring down a wallaby or a French teenager punching a ref, these moments remind us that beneath the tactics and tradition, rugby is still a battle. Which one shocked you the most? And which one do you secretly watch on replay when no one's around? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more chaos from the world of sports.